I want to clarify something before I get to the review. If I don't seem as angry as you'd think I'd be, it's because I don't have a strong attachment to the first Joker film. I acknowledge that it was a good movie. I understand why it struck a chord with people, but it just wasn't for me. So if they want to make a sequel that basically destroys the original film and invalidates not just the character, but everyone who identified with him, I'm not going to lose sleep over that, but I'm not most people. I'm not sure how we got what we got with Joker FOLIE, but it's hard to imagine how this could possibly have been a bigger slap in the face to an audience that went to the first movie and for whatever reason saw something that really resonated with them. So even though I'm not really angry, I hated this movie. Hated it. This was awful. When the first one came out, Todd Phillips, the writer-director, was pretty open about how he didn't intend to make a sequel, and when you see this one, that'll be obvious. Everything he wanted to say, he said in the first movie, but then it made $1 billion, and WB backed a dump truck full of money up his driveway, so Phillips was like, well, shit. Now what? Creatively speaking, it didn't really seem to need a sequel, and clearly he had no new ideas for where the story could go, so what he landed on, at least from where I'm sitting, was a commentary on the reactions to the first film. Reactions that really seemed to get under Phillips's skin. There were so many decisions made here that seemed like they were intended to drive the audience away, as if Phillips was siding with the critics who called the first Joker movie irresponsible or whatever, and wanted to vindicate them at the expense of the audience. And that's a really bitter pill to swallow, because there is good stuff here. It's very well directed, there are some gorgeous set pieces, the cinematography is beautiful, hell, there are some shots in this movie that are downright sublime. It also has some stellar performances. Joaquin Phoenix is once again amazing as this character, and the supporting cast is great too. Mileage may vary on Lady Gaga, I'll get to her in a minute, but while there is good filmmaking on display here, every aspect of this thing feels like it was made by a filmmaker who resented the audience because they liked the first movie for the wrong reasons and wanted to make those people feel bad or guilty or stupid for ever liking it in the first place. What we have here is really two movies, neither of which is the movie I think the audience wanted. The one they wanted, if I had to guess, would be the next chapter of Arthur Fleck's story and how he embraces this persona and goes from burgeoning psychopath to the clown prince of crime. I mean, that's what you'd expect when the story is about the Joker. It's really not, but one thing at a time. Instead, the two movies we get are, one, an underwhelming, nonsensical courtroom drama that bends over backwards to break Arthur Fleck down until all the disenfranchised people who identified with him last time and propped him up as some kind of heroic figure who gave a voice to their plight feel like complete idiots, and two, a very out-of-place, baffling, inexplicable musical about God knows what. Let's talk about the musical stuff. For the life of me, I could not tell you what the thought process was here. Whether they really had no other ideas for this, or if it was just as simple as we've got Lady Gaga, so we need some singing. And hey, look, I like Lady Gaga. I like her music. I like her as an actor. But what the was this? What are musical numbers even doing in this movie? I'm not a fan of musicals. They're not my thing. I like La La Land. That's about it. But I know that the point of the musical numbers should be to help tell the story, to push the story forward, to tell the story through music. Well, somebody forgot to tell Todd Phillips, because while some of the musical segments are staged well and can be nice to look at, even beautiful at times, every one of them, and I do mean every one, is weird and awkward and absolutely pointless. Instead of pushing the story forward, all they do is hold it back. They serve no purpose whatsoever. They take you out of the movie over and over and over again. They don't add anything to the story that wasn't already there. Hell, if you cut them all out of the movie, it would make the story better, because every goddamn time something interesting starts to happen, it gets interrupted when the characters break into some WTF song and dance number you couldn't care less about. The movie never even gets moving because it's dragged to a screeching halt every few minutes because of this shit. Let me tell you something. This isn't a super long movie by today's standards, but it felt like it would never end. I cannot believe how much easier it would have been to get through without the musical stuff. Not only would you lose absolutely nothing, you'd shave a good 20-25 minutes off the runtime that the movie did not need. None of this crap belonged in there. This alone would have been more than enough enough to tank the entire film. And believe it or not, that's not even the worst part. And that brings us to the other movie this was trying to be, a very dour, depressing, at times difficult to watch courtroom drama that does have some excellent performances, but if there was any life still in the film at all after the musical stuff, this is what kills it dead. Beyond the fact that huge chunks of it were just recapping what happened in the first movie, because this is where we see the real purpose of the film. The real intentions Todd Phillips had in making it, which was to basically strip away everything that made the first film work, to deconstruct and tear down the character of Arthur Fleck, to reframe his crimes in the first film not as the understandable rage of a man driven to madness by a shitty society that gave up on him, but rather as the sad outburst of a pitiable, pathetic little weirdo, and to single out anyone in the audience who identified with Arthur Fleck, who sympathized with him or elevated him to some kind of martyr status or made him out to be a figure who spoke for them or did what they'd always wanted to do or anything like that, and punish them for it. I'm not exaggerating here. It really does feel like the whole point of the second half of the movie was to make Arthur Fleck look like the biggest loser imaginable. Not that we didn't get that in the first film, but that one had a lot of social commentary about how society treats the mentally ill and framed Arthur as kind of a tragic victim. But there's no commentary here. It's just dull, straightforward courtroom stuff where anything that you might have liked, appreciated, or gotten attached to with this character in the first film ultimately gets destroyed. And there is one new thing in there where they toy with the idea that Arthur and Joker are two separate personalities and Arthur can't be held responsible for what Joker does. Seems more like a Two-Face thing, but whatever. But that just gets torn down in the end too without really going anywhere, so it's really just in the movie to fill time. And there are even a couple moments during this when it looks like things are turning a corner and Arthur's had enough and he's finally gonna become the character people wanted to see him become at the end of the first film, but then he doesn't. It's just a bait and switch. They lure you in and then they make you feel stupid for falling for it, because once it's got you, the movie just runs in the other direction as fast as it can. Literally, this story was never about Arthur becoming that character. It was about him ultimately rejecting that character along with all the people who identified with it, and then the people in the movie who identified with it rejecting him for doing so. That's the message of this movie, that anyone, including the audience and Arthur Fleck himself, who looked up to Joker, who saw themselves in Joker, who thought he was someone worth following, or who gave them something they needed, was wrong. This movie wants you to feel like a jackass forever looking at Arthur Fleck with anything other than pity. It's also a bit of an FU to anyone who thought this movie was gonna go in the direction of the comics. Get those thoughts out of your head right now. There's no tie-in with the Matt Reeves movies. Batman doesn't show up. There are one or two Batman characters in there, but they might as well not be because the movie doesn't give a shit about that. There is a kind of sort of tie-in to comic stuff in the final scene, but it feels more begrudging than anything else. Speaking of Batman characters, let's talk about Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. There were a few things I liked with this character. I like that they stuck closer to her real origins than other recent iterations of Harley Quinn have. She's a mentally unhinged woman who was inspired by Joker, idolized Joker, is obsessed with Joker despite or perhaps because of how toxic and f***ed up their relationship is. That's pretty close to how Harley started out. Her bubbly personality wasn't there, and I was missing that, but it was nice to see these characters finally interacting in a f***ing movie together for more than 5 minutes. But as it goes on, it becomes clear that she's just using him like everyone else in the movie is, and there's no payoff to it because the movie isn't interested in paying anything off. So you're not really getting the Joker-Harley relationship here, you're getting something else that's wearing the desiccated, rotting corpse of that relationship like a coat. But look, I don't want to shit on Gaga. You could say that she's underused in the movie. They obviously only wanted her for her vocal chops, but she's charismatic, her and Phoenix have a lot of chemistry. The issues with this character are not because of her. Here's the big problem. She doesn't really need to be there. If you take her out of the movie, the story doesn't actually change that much. It would be mercifully shorter, there'd be fewer musical numbers, which would have been a big positive despite Gaga singing her ass off during those things, but the story would have mostly turned out the same way, though it might have hurt slightly less. And the reason for this is she's not there to be the Bonnie to Joker's Clyde. She's not really there to be Harley Quinn. She's not even there to be Lee. She's there to be the audience. She's in this movie to be a vehicle for Todd Phillips' message to the audience that if you idolized Joker, if you appreciated Joker for doing or saying the things that you couldn't, if you found anything inspiring about Joker at all, then you made a huge mistake and you're a fucking idiot who's just gonna end up let down, bitter, angry, and disenfranchised with the whole damn thing. In the end, her character is only there to make Arthur's story that much more miserable and to make the audience miserable too, which felt pretty redundant considering everything else that happens. Not only is Joker Folie à Deux a film that resents its own audience, it feels like it resents itself for even existing in the first place and wanted to make sure that nobody would ever again make the mistake of demanding more of these movies. Well, mission f***ing accomplished. This was downright painful to sit through. It felt insulting to the viewers, insulting to the characters. It is a slow-paced, sad, morose, depressing, mean-spirited, weirdly boring, nihilistic movie. And yeah, the first one was too, but at least the first film ended in kind of a cathartic, satisfying way, albeit a really twisted one. But this movie wants to take back all that satisfaction you got, piss all over it, and tell you that you were wrong to ever feel that way because Joker isn't a hero or martyr to be idolized or appreciated, and Arthur Fleck is just some sad, pathetic, miserable loser. The end. What the f***? I felt like shit after watching this thing. This is the polar opposite of a feel-good movie made by a filmmaker with an axe to grind against the movie's own fan base and wanted that fan base to feel stupid or guilty or like they wasted their time for ever liking the first film to begin with. There's shooting your own movie in the foot, and then there's chopping the foot off to spite the people watching the movie. I don't know why they would do this, I don't know why the studio would let them do this, but I never want to see either of these movies again. And to Todd Phillips, the next time you're looking for an IP to piggyback on so you can rant about the mentally ill or how much society sucks or how much you just hate your own fucking audience and want to drive them away apparently, do it with some other property. Maybe call up Kathleen Kennedy. With an attitude like that, you'd fit right in over at Lucasfilm. I guess I was angrier about this one than I thought, huh? Sometimes I never know until I sit down and record these things. Thanks for watching, though. While you're here, ding that bell icon and follow my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. The links are down there. And don't forget to do all the other YouTube things by smashing that like button, leaving a comment, sharing the video, subscribing if you haven't already, and making sure you're still subscribed, because what really deserves to have everything that people ever liked about it stripped away until those people are cursing themselves for ever liking it in the first place is the YouTube algorithm. That's all for now. I'll be back with more soon. Take care, stay tuned. I'll see you next time.